Hello, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. The Office of Research and Innovation's mission is to foster the advancement of cutting-edge research discoveries and technology at the University of Texas at Dallas. With our departmental resources, we provide faculty, staff, and students with a variety of specialized information and training to help efficiently navigate funding opportunities. During today's National Science Foundation Career Spotlight Series, Dr. Shiyi Wei will share his experience and timeline developing the career proposal and provide insights into how the career proposal differs from some other proposals he has written. I am Tiffany Willoughby, Research Education Programs and Outreach Assistant Director in the Office of Research and Innovation at the University of Texas at Dallas. I will serve as a session moderator. Dr. Wei is an assistant professor in the Computer Science Department at the University of Texas at Dallas. He received his PhD in computer science from Virginia Tech in 2015 and spent 2 years as a postdoctoral associate in the Computer Science Department at the University of Maryland, College Park. His research interests span the areas of programming languages, software engineering, and security. The goal of his research is to make program analysis practical for improving the security and reliability of real-world software. He received an NSF Career Award in 2021. Welcome, Dr. Wei.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Tiffany, for the introduction. So I'm glad to be here to be able to share my experience preparing and writing my career proposal. So here's the agenda that I'm going to go through for today's talk. So here's my outline. So I will spend a few minutes just to discuss some of my research interests, which is in relevance, of course, to my career proposal. I will spend most of the time discuss the timeline that I worked on to prepare my career proposal. I will, in my discussion, I will divide this timeline into 3 pieces, essentially what I did before I even start writing the proposal, and what are the things that I focused on writing the proposal, and after submission, what happened. So yeah, as I mentioned, let me start with some background introduction and some introduction of my research interests. So as introduced, I'm currently an assistant professor at the Computer Science Department at UTD since 2017. And previously, I did a postdoc at University of Maryland. I obtained my PhD from Virginia Tech. And back in 2019, obtained my undergraduate degree in China from Shanghai Jiao Tong University. So my research interests really span in 3 very important areas in computer science. Specifically, they are programming languages, software engineering, and software security. The specific focus of my research, my most recent research, have been trying to develop automated error detection tools to find critical errors in software. The techniques or the tools that we use to develop such tools are there are 2 techniques that we use. One is called software analysis, and the other is called software testing. So let me try to give a very high-level and brief introduction of this research focus. So I don't think it needs a lot of motivation to say that software is becoming more and more important in our daily life. I believe every one of us have extensively used these websites and apps in our mobile phones for many different purposes. For example, online banking or keeping our private information in those apps. And of course, the software goes beyond those websites and apps. Actually, almost every critical infrastructure that supports our daily life, there is this presence of software. For example, in our cars and airplanes, there are wide use of software to control their functionality. Thus, needless to say, it is very important for us to ensure the quality of the software is ensured. One thing to note, though, is software is written by human beings. So software developers or software engineers write those software. Inevitably, people make mistakes when writing those software. So it is a very important task for our research community as well as the industry to make sure that the software we produce have high quality. So what have we done? So our community has developed many rigorous development process, so-called software development lifecycle, that the software developers and software engineers need to follow to ensure these software are well tested before they are released. And in addition, the research community has focused on developing and inventing many new automated bug detection tools to support this development process, to make sure these errors in software can be found well in advance before it is accessible to the users. So you might wonder, what kind of errors could exist in software and how that could impact our life? Well, let's start with something probably arguably a little bit benigner than some more critical errors. So I believe this is something everyday user probably see when they use whatever operating system or whatever software. For example, if you use a Microsoft Word, once in a while, you may see in the middle of your use a window pop up and say the software exited unexpectedly. What would we do? We close it and probably restart the software. Hopefully, not too much damage have been done. Maybe in some times that we lost some data. Well, this is an indication of the existence of software error in widely used software. But what can be worse is that what if these software errors are used or taken advantage by people with bad intentions, so-called security attackers? They may take advantage of those software errors and cause more severe damages. For example, it is widely known, and I believe that you have seen or heard many news of such, that, for example, recently, there are many ransomware attacks that take advantage of software errors that to steal personal information. These news are everywhere. For example, a common mistake software developers make is that in order to store the user account information or user data in their software, we usually use something called a database. And it's not, sometimes these data were not stored securely so that it's not accessible to those attackers. If that is the case, the attackers may obtain this information, which can be our private information, such as credit card information or even healthcare information. So this is very critical for us to protect such errors from happening. So as I mentioned, that my recent research has focused on two lines of approaches to automatically find such errors in software. One is called fuzz testing, and the other is called static program analysis. So I'm just going to give a very high-level overview of what these techniques do. In fact, fuzz testing is a fairly straightforward idea, but a very powerful one that has been widely applied in industry nowadays. So if we would just think about software as this target that we want to hit through some approach to find errors in it, and we can imagine the software, most of the software that we're talking about would take some form of input from users. So for example, if you're using some app from your mobile phone, it takes input from you and produce some results. So what this fuzz testing do is that it takes some input, which could be a benign one that won't hit the error in the software when running it, but it takes this such input and use algorithms to mutate or generate many new inputs randomly and iteratively, with the hope that some of these inputs would be run and actually find errors in this program. Okay. Of course, our research will focus on this process called fuzz testing or fuzzer, that we will try to improve the algorithm in it so that we can efficiently and effectively explore the input space so that they can generate useful inputs to find errors in the software. The other approach that my research group has focused on is called a static program analysis. It is actually a complementary approach to fuzz testing. As I mentioned, fuzz testing needs to run a program, generate inputs, and run the program or run the software many times in order to find some potential errors in it. While for static analysis, instead, it examines the program code without executing it. So let me still use a fairly straightforward visualization to demonstrate it. Just consider this part of the screen as the whole domain or whole space of our software code. And there may be errors in the software here and there that we need to find through some approaches. what static analysis do is that it approximates potentially all the possible behavior or all the possible program executions without executing, but examining the program code. The benefit of doing that is that it may have a chance to tell the users of such tool that the software is free of certain kinds of error, which is a desired property that we would like to have for software, a software that is free of error. Of course, this kind of powerful property comes with trade-offs or comes with disadvantages. Often, this is that the static analysis has to build on top of some complicated algorithm that is not easy to get those right, and also it requires a deeper learning curve for the users to use the static analysis tool. So compared to testing approaches, as I discussed, static analysis is less widely applied in the industry just because of those reasons. And this is part of the problem that my career proposal was trying to address. So before I move on to talk about my career award, I would just like to mention that, of course, all these research that my group have been doing, including those that form the preliminary work for my career proposal, have been contributed by all my research team, including those 4 PhD students I currently work with and undergraduate students. They all work on different directions or different applications of those approaches I've just introduced. So here is a screenshot of my career award. Just by looking at the title, you may get a sense that what I'm trying to address is really the practicality of static analysis tool, specifically the kind of the static analysis tool that they will build with different configuration, meaning that they are built with different algorithms, how they are going to inspect code to find errors. Or just to be able to put into perspective what I did when I prepared the proposal, I'm just going to spend just a minute or two to describe these research goals that I encoded in this proposal. So I identified 5 research goals. All of them are going to contribute to the general goal that I would like to achieve by this proposal, that is to improve the practicality of the static analysis tools. For the first 4 research goals, each of them are trying to improve one perspective of the practicality, specifically the usability, the correctness, maintainability, and the performance of the static analysis tool. And each of them, of course, is trying to improve or push for the wider application of such tools. And of course, they are also connected in order, and their outputs are useful for the users of static analysis tools. And the research goal number 5 is really the combination or the integration of those research contributions. I want to make sure that the research ideas and the research artifacts I develop are available and can be generalized to be adapted to many static analysis tools to improve the practicality of such tools. So here is a really short or brief timeline that showed some of the milestones of the process. So as you can see that the submission of my proposal of the career proposal was on August 2020. But well before that, actually there are many activities that I've taken that is relevant to that. So for example, at March 2019, we started this preliminary work that really serves of the foundation to show the feasibility of the work. So that's almost 1.5 years before the actual submission of the proposal. And even before that, actually, just a few months after I joined UTD, I attend a very useful mentoring workshop where there are program directors and different advisors in my research community that give advice to what the career proposals are like and what, in general, the junior faculty career is like. I found that really helpful for me to develop this career proposal. I started writing at May 2020, so probably I spent 2.5 years on the actual writing of the proposal. And after submission, it took roughly 4 months, a little bit less than 4 months for me to hear the initial notification of its potential funding, and it took another 2 months for for the process to be finalized in 2021. So as I mentioned, in order to put in the context of what are the differences of some of the other proposals I write comparing to the career proposal, so I just want to briefly elaborate on what other proposals I've written actually before my submission of the career proposal. So I had 3 funded proposals before the career proposal, and 2 of them involve collaboration with faculty from other institutions. And another one, which I serve as a co-PI, is a collaboration with a colleague in my department, the Department of Computer Science, that work on a topic of both of our interests. So let me start by give some general thoughts of what I think in general proposal writing is about, and some specific thinking about the career proposal writing. But I want to, of course, say that these are definitely just my own personal experience. So you can just regard whatever I said or each bullet I pointed out as I think, right? So maybe not all the idea or what I did apply to everyone, depending on what you work on or the scenario or the kind of project you work on. So for me, I've been thinking, so this is actually an advice I get from my advisors as well. So I've been thinking of the process of preparing a proposal as a way or an opportunity really to help me to dig deeper about the significance or the impact of the work and help me form or concretize ideas. I know that for every research we do, we're really excited about that and believe that it has high impact. But I felt that writing a proposal really helped me to be able to explicitly say those things, because this is sort of required by a successful proposal to be able to convince other people that your work is significant and have high impact. So I felt that I really is trying to use this process as a way for me to explicitly to be able to dig into those. And the second point I'm trying to make is I don't believe there's a one-size-fits-all process or model that would lead to success of every proposal. But I do believe that there is some good practice probably everyone can develop, and I'm happy to share some of those today with, again, what worked for me. And finally, I felt it was very important to really know the overall process, especially what happened after our submission, to help us to put in the context that what we should focus on when we the proposal. So for example, talking about the career proposal, we all know that this is a NSF-wide program, although it doesn't mean that your proposal is going to be reviewed by someone who is not working in your subject, but it could mean that these reviewers who review your proposal could have a varied or high variance of the mixed expertise level. They could be from your subject, but it may not be the people who actually read all your past research papers to know all the terms that you're going to put in your proposal. So what that means to our proposal would potentially indicate that we probably need to address to a more general audience to make sure that the impact is understood by the general audience and the background is explicitly spelled out in our proposal. Just as an example on why it is important to understand the review process of the proposal submission procedure. So now let me, as I mentioned, to divide this timeline into 3 parts, starting with what I did before writing the proposal. And these are the 3 things I would like to talk about. So starting with really the general preparation for seeking advice, gaining experience in proposal writing, and make some decisions about submitting the career proposals. So just want to make a few points. So for me, probably the most useful thing I did with this part of the preparation is really I tried hard to seek advice from a wide range of people, including my advisors, my colleagues and collaborators, and also those more senior people in my research community. I find that all of them are very supportive of us junior faculty to of course, form our research group and write strong career proposals. I've heard a lot of good advices from these people and really helped me to understand the process better. The second point I'm trying to make is that I really believe that these broader impacts, as we know, that needs to go into every proposal we submit to NSF, these are the efforts that we should make way before we start writing the proposal. I felt for me, it is a case that how do we ensure the broader participation in computer science and in computing in general. So we can, as junior faculty, when we take this position, we can probably do a lot of things to make sure that we have concrete and creative things to say about broader impacts. For example, in the process of us recruiting students, doing the outreach activity, for me, I find as a junior faculty, it is extremely useful to pay attention and be proactive, to be involved in those events that my department, school, the university, as well as my research community organized to be part of those and be proactive in part of those. So I'll get to that a little bit more when I talk about the writing of the proposal on the broader impact. So I guess another common question, which I had at least, was when should I submit this career proposal? So of course, as we know, the rule from NSF is that the career proposal could be submitted up to 3 times. And so it's a decision that should we submit really early in our career, like for example after the first year, or we should wait a little bit to submit it, for example, later, maybe at year 3. So I can first tell what I did. So I submitted, my first submission was at year 3. So the funded one was my first submission. But the reason for that is, I think it's very specific to me. So for example, for the first year, I didn't submit it just because that, first of all, I had another proposal funded in the first year that is able to support some of my research group recruitment effort, for example. But also at that point, at the end of the first year, I really didn't have the preliminary work that I feel confident to submit to a 5-year proposal for a career proposal. Well, for the second year, the situation is a little bit different. So as mentioned, I started preparing the preliminary work, which I'm confident that should go into the career proposal at the mid of the second year. So at that time, I did have quite a few some preliminary work to propose, but I just decided not to submit it just because of other reasons, right? For example, that just considering the overall funding situation and the availability of the funding in my group. So that's really just a very specific choice that I made to submit at year 3. And I believe all of us have heard, again, seeking up from the advices from our advisors about arguments on both sides. So I really believe this is specific to every person, but it's good to hear the arguments on both sides. So the next thing I would like to talk a little bit about is about the connections, especially the connections with program directors. So as I mentioned that I attended this mentoring workshop in 2018, which they arranged, that was organized by Computing Research Association. So there are many junior faculties attending that event. There are a lot of senior faculty in computer science attending, as well as the program director attending in that event. So I felt that was a really useful event that for me to learn about the process, to learn about and connect with these program directors, and also, at least in my area, there are many conferences that we regularly attend. And fortunately, those program directors also go there to share their thoughts, to even give formal advices to us junior faculties. I find those connections are very important, and these trips to those workshops and conferences were very useful. So finally, on this part, just to reflecting on the other proposals I wrote, I thought that these were really a good learning experience for me to prepare for the career proposal. So these collaborative proposals I wrote were working with, some of them are junior faculty as similar to me, and some of them are more senior faculty. So I learned different style of approaching problems. I learned different ways to write the proposal, and hopefully I can find the ways that best suits for me when I write an individual PI proposal. And that's sort of what I did when I write the career proposal. So the second thing I would like to say that like definitely a very important decision to make well before we start writing the proposal, I start writing the proposal, is to decide on the research direction or topic to include. So there are really two high-level considerations I believe I put into this for this. So one is considering about the long-term impact about this proposal. So as we know that the career proposal is usually have the duration of 5 years. That's a little bit different from the other proposals that I wrote. Usually all of them are 3 years. So there are differences in terms of duration and the indication also in terms of the impact, these different kinds of impact these proposals are expected to make. Of course, all the proposals should make strong impact to our research, but I believe the expectation for the career proposal is it should have long-term impact, hopefully well beyond 5 years. So that is one aspect that helped me decide on the topic of my career proposal. The other is about the unification, the unique qualification about myself, just considering what my past research is and reflecting on the difference with these collaborative proposals, because for those we have multiple PIs. It's usually a good thing that for these PIs to have complementary expertise, while for career proposal, it's definitely a single PI project, and how this project should how should I choose a research topic that I'm most qualified for and show my qualification to work on it? So with these two things in mind, topic I chose, this topic that to improve the practicality of configurable static analysis tools, I felt this sweet spot for those considerations, in that many of those techniques that I proposed in these individual research goals would build on top of my past research expertise, while this problem that I'm trying to address with this career proposal is definitely a new one that is underexplored in my research area. So I think it is really a combination of both to be able to make long-term impact, but also show that my qualification of carrying this project. So a final note on the on this timeline, on this part of the timeline, is on the preliminary work. So once we decide, so I have a sense of what the research direction to go, I worked with my PhD student on really just doing this research, and that eventually served as the preliminary results for our proposal. So these preliminary work that we did in about 1 year of the time, provided evidence of the feasibility of the proposed work, which I believe is very critical to the success of this proposal. And also tested quite a few hypotheses during our research and allowed me to adjust what I should do next. So just specifically reflecting on this overview figure that I included in the proposal, so most of these preliminary work were targeted on the first and second research goal, and they happen to be able to show the feasibility of these research goals, and specifically, for example, that we require, if we have some more formal specification of these configurations in the static analysis tools, there is a chance that we can best test those tools to make sure they are more correct. So this is an evidence that we were able to provide in the preliminary results that definitely strengthen the proposal. So these are all the points that I wanted to cover on this part of the timeline. So I'm wondering if we have any questions at this point before I move on to talk about the actual writing.
Thank you, Dr. Wei. We do have a few questions from the audience. The first few questions actually relate to your research. The questions are, what route do you feel is better, fuzz or static, or a combination of the two?
So yeah, definitely. So very good question. So if you look at my past research, my first research is really a blended or hybrid analysis that includes both testing and static analysis. And that's what I still believe in, because it is very clear and it's well known about the theoretical limitations of fuzz testing and static analysis, as I briefly mentioned when I introduced those. So I really believe that there exist approaches that could combine them and make it the best of the both worlds is the way that I'm definitely pursuing in my current research as well. So yeah, combination.
Excellent. The next question is, running both systems, does it work in real world situations?
Yeah, so actually that's happening, right, in real world industry. So again, my understanding of the question is that can we apply both approaches, for example, the fuzz testing and static analysis independently to test or analyze the real world applications? Yes, that's definitely is what's actually happening in those large companies. From what I heard, a connection with those companies, they try very hard to do testing. That's their normal practice. And they also have usually employ expertise in static analysis to use those tools. But as I mentioned, there are limitations of both sides. Applying them independently often costs a lot of overhead in terms of manpower needed and limitation from both approaches. So yes, definitely it is good idea and the good practice to apply both tools for real world software to find errors, but also from the research perspective, we should definitely push harder to resolve challenging issues in both sides, and hopefully, as I mentioned, combine them to achieve better results.
Thank you, Dr. Wei. The next questions are actually related to NSF career proposals. Do you feel that the 3 funded proposals prior to your career were helpful in supporting your career proposal? And if so, how?
Yeah, as I mentioned, definitely. That's a positive answer, I believe. When I joined UTD, I didn't have a lot of proposal writing experience. I was really skeptical about this task that we need to be able to achieve as an assistant professor. So these proposal writing experience, the first one, I wrote the proposal with another junior faculty, also a new junior faculty at the same time I joined a new institution. We sort of explored the process together. It was really a learning experience for both of us to figure out all these required things and again ask people about what should be done. But that was an exploration process. The second proposal I wrote was with more senior faculty. I was able to learn a lot more in a sense that to observe what they did. And actually, both of them are doing things in different ways. So as I mentioned, that I really learned a lot from this experience in that, first, I don't believe that there's a common practice that it should apply for each proposal, and that's true for the 3 proposals I did. But for each one of them, I was able to learn, for example, what kind of preliminary work efforts we should put in such a proposal, and what kind of broader impacts we should write in such a proposal from different perspectives. Yeah, so definitely positive experience for me to writing those proposals, and I believe that's very critical for me to write before me writing this career proposal.
Thank you, Dr. Wei. The next question we have from the audience is, what was the hardest part of the submission process for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Let me think about it. So I felt that, one thing is, when I wrote the proposal, of course, we have other duties going on. But one of the fortunate thing about career proposal is deadline is in August, so it's summer, so we have less of a teaching load effort that needs to be done at the same time. But it is very challenging, at least for me, to sort of have a balance between working with the students of the actual research, while you have to dedicate a lot of time writing this proposal. So that was definitely difficult because at the same time we need to submit our research papers and so on. So the balancing the time and also catch the deadline is difficult, definitely. But of course, in the specific writing process, probably I will mention a little bit more when I talk about the writing on the specific part.
Absolutely, that makes sense. I know that broader impact plans are very important, a very important component of the NSF Career Award proposal. What did you do specifically to develop your broader impacts plan?
Yeah, actually, I will talk about this. So probably let me delay the answer to this question when I talk about the broader impact. I think I have an interesting case to show on that. So maybe if it's possible, let me delay the answer to that because I will mention it.
That sounds great. Absolutely, Dr. Wei. And please feel free to proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right. So yeah, let me proceed, I guess, to the second part of the timeline where I actually started the writing. So I just want to make sure that I can make it clear that what I actually wrote and sort of what is the distribution of in terms of page distribution of the writing. So first, I will talk about those technical parts of the proposal writing first, and then I will talk about some other supporting documents. So for the project description, of course, the requirement is 15 pages. So let me first show the distribution of those individual sections. So I spent 2.5 pages on the introduction, including half-page intellectual merit. There is 1-page motivation. I used the preliminary study to motivate the significance of the work. I spent roughly 9 pages on the proposed work, and these 9 pages were divided or organized by these individual research goals. And for each research goal, I present the preliminary results, the proposed work, evaluation plan, as well as the expected outcomes. So I have a short section on the research schedule, which to me really helps justify the resources I ask and also to show the timeline to complete these individual research goals. And I spent a little bit over half a page on broader impacts, which is a mistake. And that's why I say that it will be an interesting case to show about my broader impacts, which I'll talk about later. So definitely need longer about the broader impacts, which I will mention. And another page on related work, additional related work, and of course it's required to have the results from prior support. So let me probably dive into some of the individual sections and make some points, if any. So on the summary, so as we know that the usual construction of the summary should include an overview, an intellectual merit, and the broader impacts. In 1 page. So serves, of course, as a summary or overview of our problem statement, the research goals, and significance. The one point I would like to make, though, is knowing the review process. The summary is depending, of course, the program directors. The reviewers, summary is often used by the reviewers to match their interest and to decide if they want to review a proposal. And of course, that would play a big impact on the outcome of this proposal. So that's why it's fairly critical, I believe, to make sure that this summary have all these keywords and make clear statements of these problems so that the reviewers who are interested or related to your research that can better judge your research can review this paper. So that's one point I want to make about the summary. So on the introduction, so I think the first 3 points are probably very obvious, that we need to show the significance, the impact, and the feasibility and novelty of the work. Maybe I want to say one more point that is probably more true for the career proposal. That is, we want to make sure that this is a 5-year proposal, that we definitely would propose solutions in probably different stages or in steps. So we want to make sure that we can remind the reviewer and demonstrate to the reviewer that these proposed solutions are cohesive, are supportive of the same goal. So what I did, as again, I showed this overview figure. So what I highlighted is that these research goals really are providing different information, different outcomes to those users that we want to make sure that they can more practically use the static analysis tools. So I think this shows that these solutions are cohesive and that we are not just proposing different ideas for different problems. I think that's fairly important to achieve in the introduction. So this is my intellectual merit. I will just quickly mention that for my intellectual merit, I highlighted the practical needs, the motivation, the impact if it is successful, the research strategy applied, my qualification, as well as the broader impact for my community, given the research that we are proposing to do for in this proposal. The point I would like to make about presenting the preliminary results and the proposed work is actually reflecting back to the preliminary results, right? So I mentioned that the preliminary results were, I believe, are very useful to demonstrate the feasibility of the proposal. But at the same time, I tried very hard to make sure there was a clear distinction between the preliminary and the proposed work. So I think that was very critical to make sure that this new research, that every reader of the proposal is clear that the preliminary work doesn't solve all the problem, or the proposed work are just a continuation of the preliminary work. Rather, there should be very specific problems or new ideas that are needed to for the proposed work. So I tried very hard and on that point to make sure that there's a clear distinction. Also, to present the proposed work, especially reflecting on the career proposal, I really think it is a good thing to propose even alternative solution, considering in some cases some of the ideas may not work. I really don't think this is a negative thing, because that really shows that we think comprehensively about the problem, and it's probably just the nature of our research that many of those high rewarding research would have higher risk of failure, of course. So I felt for the career proposal, given that this have a 5-year duration, at least for me, it was not very easy to predict what exactly is going to happen at year 5. So I felt that it was a positive thing to mention about alternative solutions and the expected outcome, especially for those high risk goals. Now, let's talk about broader impacts. So as I mentioned, I'm really trying to show a bad example here in my proposal. So why is it? So here is what I copied from one of the reviews I received. So if you read it, it's basically saying that my broader impacts are not good. The education plan and the outreach plan are not specific enough, are not creative enough, that needs expansion to show the actual plan. So what I believe I did was to basically generally say what I cared about. Of course, I have plans to teach courses relevant to this research. I have plans, and I did recruit students that is relevant as well. But apparently, these are not enough and not broader enough to be able to convince the reviewers that these are really this research are going to generate broader impact. And that's what I believe in, right? That's really what I believe in now and before, just I did do a good job writing it. So I really believe that we should be very creative and specific about the broader impacts. So that's why I suggested that these efforts to improve the broader impacts should happen before that we write the proposal so that we can have concrete things to reflect on our experience. So for example, in my department, we have many events that are organized, that are outreach events, for example, reaching out to high school students. As assistant professor, I have been trying to involve in those events, for example, mentoring or involve high school students in relevant research. These things should go into broader impact that shows the specific efforts that we have made and really go beyond the general claims about what we care. And so I feel this is something that's really important, especially for the career award, that the reviewers and the program directors and NSF in general care about. We as young researchers, if we can create research programs that can create really broader impacts. I think that's very, very important, and providing a counterexample, a bad example, probably hopefully helps to show what the expectation from the reviewers or from, in general, the NSF are. So these are what are the things that I want to briefly mention about each component of the technical parts of the proposal. So of course, we are expected to submit other documents along with the proposal. Probably one of the more important documents is the budget. So interestingly, I don't believe that for the career program, there is an upper bound for what you could ask for, but just the lower bound. Of course, the approach I took to decide my budget is, of course, trying to be reasonable to make sure that what I ask reflects what I propose. Second, that I did look at the other PIs recently funded proposal to see what region of the funding that they got. So that probably is a good reflection of what is the common amount of funding that was funded for the career proposal. So for me, the decision I was trying to make, really these factors I'm trying to balance, is really how many students salary that I would like to pursue. So eventually I decided to ask for more student, so graduate students as salary, just because that I felt that better reflect the work that I proposed. But of course, I had to do some balance, for example, reducing some of my faculty salary for summer. But yeah, that was the choice I made. And again, that's probably very specific to each proposal and each situation. And of course, these other documents that are required to submit, including these collaborators and the affiliation, short bio, current and pending support, as well as the facilities resources. Specifically for career proposal, we also need to submit a departmental support letter. And of course, all of our department heads are very supportive of our submission for a career proposal. Probably one advice is just to start this early, because we could be able to have a strong support letter this way if we allow time to prepare for such letter. So finally, I would like to just still within this timeline to say a little bit about working with others on even this career proposal, right? Because I still believe that for the proposal I write, it is a good idea to seek feedback from your advisors in different levels, in sometimes general advice and sometimes concrete suggestions for the research. So definitely something that is going to be useful, especially, for example, for the broader impacts. And of course, we work with our Office of Research in the process of the submission and preparation. So just to share some of my experience working with our Office of Research, one recommendation, I believe, is for one thing, that there is the internal certification process. That definitely is something that is good to start as early as possible, just because there are many parties involved for approval process. So that's something probably we should start and coordinate as early as possible. My experience working with our Office of Research is that it was really extremely helpful for me to to know what, first of all, what document I need to submit with each different proposal, but also be provided with those up-to-date templates or requirements of those individual documents. As we know that NSF sort of frequently update these kind of templates, and it's very hard for me to keep track of those. So our Office of Research was very good at doing that, and yeah, this was extremely helpful. And also, I believe that we have some editing support from our Office of Research. I have not taken advantage of this during my proposal preparation, but that's definitely a channel or something that you could explore to see if it helps. All right, so yeah, so that's all what I want to say about the writing process. So let me just briefly say what happens after submission. Of course, long waiting and sometimes anxious to know the results, but it's just what it is, and it takes at least a couple of months to know the results. So we had just to focus on the things in our life. But after a few months, the results will be in one way or the other, funded or not. I've both experienced with rejected proposal as well as funded proposal. Especially for those that rejected, in one case, that was one of the proposal that is currently funded that was rejected, I found some review feedback were really helpful to improve the research and the broader impacts. So what we did with that proposal is that we really take the points that were raised by the review, which we think are valid and constructive, and we really just mostly improved on those points. And the second time we submit the proposal, it was funded. So I definitely see some of those feedbacks being useful. Of course, requires some filtering of those review. And in my case, as I mentioned, for the broader impact, I was literally asked to improve that for its final funding. So even if the proposal is likely to be funded, you may still be asked to improve some aspects of your proposal. Yeah, so once our proposal is accepted or is going to be funded, we are going to be asked to write a public abstract or award abstract. In that case, it is expected to address to a more general audience, the public, so that these abstract should include some of those non-technical descriptions as well as technical descriptions. For my program director, I was provided with specific instructions or guidelines of writing such public abstract, which I thought was very useful. So just to wrap up my talk with closing thoughts. So I felt for me was these early planning and decision making was very critical for the career proposal, making decisions on when to submit it and what topics to go with. I felt it was very critical. And in the process, I think the thing that really helped me a lot was seeking advice from various people. But also, I think it is very important, again, to emphasize that at the end, I don't think there's a best practice overall, but probably there's a best practice that applies to each of us and each individual project that we are proposing. So that's my closing thoughts, and I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation. And if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wei. I believe that you have answered all of the questions that have been submitted outside of one. We do have an audience member who was listening when you had suggested individuals interested in submitting an NSF career proposal attend workshops. Can you be more specific on which workshops you would recommend they attend, which conferences, so that they can get started on writing their career proposal?
Yeah. Definitely. And of course, my experience are within computer science, of course, but I believe that probably apply to many different areas. So first of all, in computer science, as I mentioned, there's different organizations. One of them is called Computing Research Association. I believe every 2 years, they have a mentoring workshop oriented for early or mid-career faculty members in computer science to attend. And in that event, as I mentioned, that involved quite a few senior faculty members to give suggestions for junior faculty as well as program directors. So I believe such mentoring workshop probably existed out of my area of research in different subjects. So that's one thing. The other is that that probably, I don't know if it's specific to computer science. Of course, computer science publication model is mostly driven by, many of the areas of computer science were driven by conference publications. And there are large conferences that we go to every year. For me, for example, the International Conference on Software Engineering that we usually go. And in there are mentoring workshops co-organized with these conferences that, again, similarly, senior faculty members as well as program directors go there. So for me, these were sort of these two channels, one through the organization in my research community that they organize specific mentoring workshop, and the other is this research conference. Of course, meeting people there, and of course you can seek advice from your senior, from those senior to you, as well as some specific mentoring workshop dedicated to those. Yeah, so this is my answer.
A few takeaways from Dr. Wei's program today are to plan in advance, collaborate, meet with program officers, and attend informative workshops as you begin to prepare to submit a NSF career proposal. Thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with the attendees, Dr. Wei.
Yeah, sure.
Audience members, if you enjoyed today's session, please suggest it to a friend. Interested in additional Office of Research and Innovation events? Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe to our newsletter. Feel free to use your phone to scan the QR code on this slide or follow the links posted in the chat. Finally, please take a moment to complete our research event survey. We look forward to having you join us for an upcoming Office of Research and Innovation event. Thank you and have a nice afternoon.